Hello, hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of the Daily Fringe Show Friday edition. I'm joined today by Mr. Mlondi Mdluli. Mlondi, how are you doing, man?
Hi, Nick. Well, all good and ready to roll.
Excellent, excellent. Good to have you back. And we also have today Mr. Michael Morris, who is fresh off the hot presses of opinion. He's just finished a column. So, Michael, good to have you with us.
Yeah, great to see you both. Londi, I think the last time we saw you, I saw you was on I think what could be perhaps inaccurately referred to as the fringe of the mining in Durban. It was actually in a very salubrious venue in Camps Bay with a beautiful sunset and nice canapes and drinks and so on. But yeah, obviously very important. I know you were very busy there, but yeah, good to see you both.
Right, so I'm currently sitting in an unplanned power outage, which is why my screen is a little bit dark, and also that you may hear buzzing from my inverter, so I do apologize for that. But let's get into the first news story of today, and this is one of those kind of really wacky, weird stories that I think really do say a lot about government policy. So a Gauteng High Court judge wrote a letter recently which kicked up a bit of a stir when he attacked the state attorney for using a council of all white lawyers in a BEE case. I think it was a construction company was suing the government, claiming that the BEE scorecard that had something wrong with it and improper with it, and they wanted to get it changed. And while that court case was being fought, the state decided, in order to defend BEE, they were going to hire a team of lawyers, all of whom ended up being white. The judge in particular was very upset about this. He wrote to the state attorney saying that he thought that this was a potential violation of the Constitution and he had concern of the absence of, quote, African counsel. The state attorney defended his position, however, saying that these people were chosen because of their experience as lawyers, irrespective of the color of their skin, and that the judge's demand for an explanation was impermissible. We submit that with respect to the broad-based Black Economic Empowerment Commission and Commissioner, we stand by the issues they have formulated, and that it is impermissible for the court to raise new issues to compel us to deal with matters other than those which the parties have formulated in their affidavits. He said the racial profile of the lawyers in this dispute has got nothing whatsoever to do with the merits of the case. And so there is quite a lot of irony here. In order to defend racial preference and racial selection, the state has decided in this case to forego racial selection and instead appoint people based on who they believed was the best candidates for the job. Michael, this is kind of quite amusing. What do you make of this?
Yeah, I mean, it is a kind of beautiful irony, isn't it? On various levels, but certainly the fact that it's specifically the Empowerment Commission that is being represented by what the state attorney regards as the people chosen on the basis of merit. So it's a profound contradiction and a very useful one. I think it's a useful one for the public to see. And all strength to the arm of the state attorney for stepping up and defending it. But hopefully the politicians at least will see the kind of damning irony that is at play here. On the broader issue, I mean, I think there's one thing worse than talking about race, and that's not talking about race. I think it must be something that we keep talking about because there are lots of issues to explore and to own up to and to just deal with. I often think of our former colleague Gwen Ngwenya, who has written about all kinds of things, but one of the things she's written about was this issue of merit, and that merit is something that you create. It's not something that is it's God-given. There are lots of people in this society who have got merit because their parents have spent and have had the money to spend lots of money on private classes during the matric year, for instance, to get those extra few percent in matric. If you don't have those resources, you can't spend that money on getting your kid into a sort of better position to exploit whatever advantages or opportunities are available, not advantages, opportunities available to everybody. But the person who's got the higher marks is obviously going to be able to exploit those to a more effective degree. So there are these things we need to talk about, and so it's an excellent thing, I think, that this is it has been exposed. It's out there. We've got to think about it. We've got to talk about it. It's a crazy kind of thing that the Empowerment Commission has this all-white team, but it ought not to mean by any means that what this indicates is that there aren't enough effective black lawyers, for instance. And that's in a way one of the arguments that we often make as the RR, is that the more you emphasize the kind of racial empowerment or racially based empowerment, what you're effectively doing is perpetuating this idea that black people can't do this on their own, that they do need special crutches and assistance along the way. We say absolutely not. They're just as clever and forward looking and as ambitious as anyone else. And what we've got to do is give everybody the capacity to exploit opportunities and really get ahead. So I think that's a very useful thing. And then ultimately really the final thing, and I can't remember if it was Advocate Keeble, one of the other advocates in the case, or the state attorney, who pointed out that what is essentially got to be conveyed to the ordinary citizen out there is that the legal system is one in which the best possible arguments are made on the behalf of one or other argument in law. That is really all that matters. It's not what the people look like. It's not who's arguing for you. It's simply the quality of the argument in law. And I think that's a profoundly transformative thing in a society where we know the law was subverted to political purposes for so long in this country. And
that's a principle that applies to so many areas of
exactly.
Things, not just in the legal system, but in the quality of government services, as has recently been argued in our paper on economic growth, that we pay this extra premium essentially for having racial preferential procurement in the system, and that hurts poor people because they are denied a more effective government.
Exactly.
And you bring up the point of this sort of condescending approach that if you don't, on purpose force black appointees into positions, that they will never be able to get there by themselves. Mlondi, what's often struck me about BEE's effects is that it is so, I think, psychologically toxic for everyone involved. Many white people then will resent their black co-workers or colleagues because they think that they're being unfairly privileged. Black colleagues and co-workers, regardless of how they feel about BEE, may feel that they have been appointed to a position because of the color of their skin, and it creates a sort of insecurity. You also get this bizarre examples of, just like we have in this case here, where someone will kind of say, oh, everyone else must do BEE, but not for me, right? So I will hire the people I think are the best lawyers in whatever particular case, will get the best doctor, whatever, but everyone else must have doctors who look like the country or something like that. And I think it kind of reveals how unnatural and toxic this racial bean counting stuff is, that it's just so alien to common sense and just good relations. I don't know, what do you make of all this, Mlondi?
Yes, Nick. Well, that's a good point you just raised. And also just to go a step further by arguing, that BEE has not helped reduce the country's high rates of inequality, poverty. These issues still persist. And it's important to look back and think, what has BEE done? What has it actually achieved? And the results are there. It hasn't done anything but only enrich a certain few politically connected cadres. And it's just a bad system that I think wasn't thought through. Its intention might have been good, but the outcomes have been terribly poor. And this is my opinion. I feel like the policy should have been done with long ago. It should have been scrapped long ago. But surely the government does not see anything wrong with it, which is very concerning. So yes, that's my view, that the policy has not done anything good for its intended beneficiaries.
Right. I mean, there could be a defensive BEE that society could give if, as you say, if it had actually worked. The proof is kind of in the pudding, that even if its stated goals of uplifting the lives of poor black people, it really hasn't done that much of that. Michael, any final thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, I think the one final thing is this, and it relates in a way to what Mlondi's just been saying, is that what this also gives cover to is that argument that is on the fringes of society by people who kind of get away with making these kinds of arguments, that that race actually is an issue, that white people are superior, and that this only shows that there's some kind of inferiority complex at work. And of course, that is complete rubbish. And so long as we allow the cover for that kind of evil sentiment out there, it's that much harder to defeat it. I mean, it's easily defeated, but you've got to see where it is and defeat it. And I think exploiting race in this way is always a terrible thing. It has evil consequences.
Definitely. Okay, let us move on to Gauteng now, where there has been trouble brewing for a while in the municipality of Ekurhuleni, the East Rand in Gauteng. It's long been reported that the ANC and EFF in the province, who are basically the main partners in that coalition, although they have appointed a member of the AIC as the mayor of Ekurhuleni, he's essentially just a compromise candidate between the ANC and EFF. They have been somewhat unhappy with that relationship, particularly the ANC, who have been complaining at length about it. And there's been internal squabbling about it in the ANC as well. Things seem to have come to a head yesterday when you got a little bit of a heads up that the council meeting where Action SA had proposed a motion of no confidence in the AIC mayor was endorsed by the ANC Youth League in Ekurhuleni, who said that the alliance with the EFF was damaging service delivery, and the ANC needed to get rid of the mayor. When it came time to actually vote in the council, just before the debate was had, some sort of physical fight started between the ANC and EFF councillors in the chamber, and the whole sitting, I believe, had to be called off. It was complete chaos. The DA complained, saying that they can't carry on like this and that the entire council should be dissolved. But curiously, during the meeting, the mayor's cell phone went missing. And it looks like, according to the video footage, that a councillor dressed in the EFF's red overalls slipped the cell phone during the fight into his pocket. And the device is still missing. The police are now following up on what they say is a theft of the cell phone, and they are going to try and locate it. The mayor's security team spent that entire night looking through the chamber for the cell phone. However, various media outlets reviewing the footage have said that they have seen someone dressed in their EFF councillor's clothing slipping the cell phone into his pocket. The mayor says he only noticed the device had gone missing after the EFF were removed from the sitting. So, Mlondi, not a happy scenario here, and I wonder whether this is the beginning of the end of the ANC and EFF's marriage. But, we've been saying that for months, and yet the marriage still continues. What do you think?
Yes. Well, Nick, the ANC and EFF marriage is one made, it's a match made in hell. It's really unfair to, to the people of South Africa, and what we're seeing here is a perfect example. But I think it's good, that that this is happening now, so that we as voters can see what an ANC EFF coalition will bring should it happen in 2024. That's why we need to make better voting decisions. So I'd say what's actually what's happening now in Ekurhuleni is pretty good. I'm loving it. I won't say I'm not loving it. I'm enjoying it. They must do that to each other, and so that we can see that that the ANC and the EFF aren't parties that should be voted for. And yeah, it's just complete destruction, and they must finish each other, which is good in my opinion.
Michael, what do you make of this? I mean, it's also, kind of the irony here is that it seems as like it was possibly an EFF councillor who stole that cell phone when he was probably in that first fight in order to defend the mayor from being voted out in the motion of no confidence, which would have happened if the ANC had supported the motion. What do you make of this? It seems like, this is an alliance that's going to be difficult to keep going.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, I just do love the News 24 headline: violent clashes, stolen phone, how the EFF ANC marriage of convenience crashed in Ekurhuleni. Yeah, it is all just. I mean, it's terrible. I shouldn't really be laughing. It's not really a laughing matter. The country is, in greatly.
If we don't
trouble.
laugh, we'd cry.
Yeah, well, this is it. I mean, it's probably better to laugh, and I kind of agree with Mlondi that it's good actually that this stuff is seen. I think something we often kind of take for granted is the health of our kind of media behavior, our custom being accustomed to just reporting things as we see them, and as a society we know these things as they happen. This is a very healthy thing, and it's not actually it's not typical for countries that are authoritarian and so on. I often think back to the late 1980s when every little unrest event had to be approved first by the Bureau of Information in Pretoria. And yeah, I mean, we don't have that kind of thing. We have a free media, and what it means is that we confront face to face. We come face to face every day with things like this. So it does, yeah. I mean, it does seem very clear that there's a difficulty between the EFF and the ANC. I saw somebody on Twitter a little earlier this morning saying, this kind of disruptive behavior is actually the only objective of the EFF. That is all it wants. It wants there to be chaos and inability for organizations to have quorums and to conduct themselves according to any rules, because then they can get away with whatever they want to get away with, and that is a very great risk. So as long as Mlondi says, we keep a sort of unembarrassed eye on what's going on, then I think it's probably just as well that we can see it. The problem is that some people find this quite appealing. Maybe I mean, that is always the risk, that people find that they might think this is cool and revolutionary and this is what's needed, but of course it isn't. So yeah, that is the risk.
Yeah, so I mean, this is, I think, one of the big questions about our future politics after 2024, because according to the polling, it's very possible that an EFF-ANC coalition will be very popular, very possible, and very desirable to some degree. Although I believe I'm correct in saying that when they actually ask ANC voters, a slight majority actually prefer the DA as a coalition partner to the EFF, which is kind of interesting. But anyway, this question of whether this coalition can work is a big one, and I've written on this back in 2020. I wrote a thing saying that it was important to watch this ANC EFF coalition, particularly in Ekurhuleni, because already back then there were signs of this thing cracking up.
I remember.
It's actually surprised me that it hasn't cracked up yet, although maybe finally now it will. And even though the ANC and EFF have a lot of ideological overlap, they really have the same fundamental idea of how the world works and how to fix the problems in South Africa. At the end of the day, they're both patronage parties.
Yeah.
And the patronage parties compete for resources. And I think any coalition between the ANC and MK, or the ANC and the EFF, or the ANC and the IFP, whoever you want to put in there, is going to be very messy, because you're going to have to divide the pie up in a way that no one is used to and no one is happy with. And that will be, I think, a real test of the stability of these parties. And it's going to remain to be seen whether the ANC can hold together in that environment. Mlondi, do you have any final thoughts on this issue?
No, none that I can add. But all I can say is that I wish the ANC and EFF luck, and I hope that the coalition can fall as fast or as soon as possible.
Yeah, I'm sure the ratepayers of Ekurhuleni are not particularly pleased by this disastrous situation unfolding. And I wonder if it's going to spill over into Johannesburg. That is going to be an interesting thing to watch. Okay, let us move on to our next story, and this is about Eskom. And I think some vindication for some of our views on things about how things like money is not always necessarily the source of all of the government's woes. So Eskom has been found to have overly complex management and too much red tape. This is a report. This is from a report by a German firm, which was hired by the Treasury Department to look into the problems with Eskom and load shedding. A 600-page report, which was being reported on by Business Day, says that Eskom has a really inefficient, dysfunctional, overly complex management system, and that's the primary reason for its poor performance of its coal-powered power stations, not that they don't have enough money. The report says that by cutting red tape that power station managers have to deal with would improve their ability to manage maintenance challenges promptly and efficiently. They went to say in the report that in order to prevent the collapse of some of its plants, Eskom must be allowed to do proper maintenance work, even if this means a higher level of load shedding for a limited period of time. The report highlights the main focus of the Eskom coal fleet has been to quickly fix the actual bottlenecks in generation capacities rather than prioritizing the restoration of plants to their original condition following an outage. The plants have been forced to continue operating at the expense of their technical condition. The consequences are reflected in the high number of incidents, trips, and partial load losses. This cycle has now gained so much momentum that it could lead to the collapse of plants or further capacity losses. The report says that there are some very big weak points, that, for example, the raw water treatment plant shared by Medupi and Mataba power stations needs to be maintained urgently, and that should that fail, 12 generation units with a combined capacity of 9,800 megawatts, which is what, 10 stages of load shedding by themselves, will be lost to the grid. And a similar problem is also cropping up at the Kendall power station, which is about 4,000 megawatts of power. So, Mlondi, I think the question here is, it's difficult to not see the hand of political pressure here, right? Because, it's very tempting, particularly as we get closer to an election, for the government to just say to Eskom and through their cadres in the system, just keep the system running just a little bit longer, till after the election. You could deal with the problems after the election. And I think we saw some of this back in 2016, 2017, around the local government elections there, when maintenance was very low at Eskom power plants. Am I being crazy and conspiratorial? What do you think?
No, definitely you're not being crazy and conspiratorial. I mean, that's a huge possibility, like, as we all know, this whole cadre deployment, is without a doubt that there are some cadres in Eskom that have been deployed by the ANC, similar to Transnet and other SOEs. So what you're alluding to is not, it's not a lie. There's a high possibility, I'd say 100% possibility that, that the ANC will say to its cadres, look, please do whatever you can to put the lights on, because we cannot afford to lose this election. So that cannot be discounted. I do agree with you.
Michael, what do you make of this whole issue? And I think once again it's revealed that too much red tape, too much regulation is just kind of bad for the whole system.
I mean, the actual words in the report, they use the word dysfunctional. They refer to too many organizational layers and opaque decision-making processes that generate a tremendous amount of red tape with lengthy procedures and lack of accountability. I mean, these are all things that we absolutely don't want, in conditions of crisis where you want to deliver electricity quickly and efficiently and cheaply and so on. So, yeah, I mean, it looks like this is a report which has, put its finger on exactly what the problem is. The question now is, and I don't know if we've had similar reports like this before in the past 20 years, but the question is now, what happens? What happens with this information? Are we going to act on it? That really is the key thing.
It always worries me a little bit when this report is put out by Treasury, because Treasury has a habit of being ignored by the rest of government.
Yeah, I mean, it's, you're absolutely right. We're always encouraged by, or often encouraged by things that Treasury says. And I think they've got some very smart officials. It often occurs to me when you're chatting on the Daily Friend Show, and we don't really have a chance to come back to things. But I often think of, we spend a lot of time being enormously critical of the state and so on. And I often want to just introduce that little caveat to say there are, plenty of amazing officials doing wonderful work, which I think is very true. And I'm sure that in Treasury that you've got some very smart people looking at things in a very sort of cool, measured way, and very sound kind of approach to what their job is, which is to serve the country. But as you say, if the political principles are not going to pay any attention to it and not going to acknowledge exactly the thing that we're saying, that there are these good people, and let's listen to them, let's at least give them credit for for their intelligence, their contribution to the problem. Or to the solution, then it's not going to help. And that is really the tragedy, isn't it?
Right. It's the sort of overwhelming inertia in so much of government's processes that it's just, why do we do things like this? Well, because we've always done things like this.
Yeah.
And it never really seems to change much from that. I've never encountered government officials who have not been at least prey a little bit to that kind of thing. Although good on Treasury for getting this report out there, because it is, I presume they leaked it to Business Day because I don't think it's public yet. But it's important that this stuff is recognized, because too often do various organs of the state or unions or whoever say, no, the problem is we just don't have enough money. It's too expensive. That's often an excuse used to explain our bad education results. But the reality is almost always, yes, more money could probably solve some problems, but bad management is a much, much worse problem. Mlondi, any final thoughts on this?
Yes, Nick, I definitely do agree with you that bad management is the problem. I know, and just not in SOEs, but also like in different departments, for example, as you mentioned, with regards to education, and also in health as well, there are huge problems, and that's why we often argue against the NHI, because the government is failing to fix its current health system. How would the NHI be different? So it's those things. So I do agree with you, Nick. I do agree.
Right, just scraping more money into the public health system is not going to do anything except see more money wasted. Okay, we're close to the end now, but I would just like to talk about a campaign that we've had running for a while now. It's called the Pledge to Vote campaign. And we have been encouraging South Africans to get out and vote when it comes time to elections. You can go to pledgetovote.co.za, which will send you reminders about voting and also a little bit of info about why voting is important, how many people vote, that kind of thing. Registrations to vote are now closed, so if you're not registered to vote, you will not be able to vote. But Pledge to Vote will help remind you that the election is coming up, so that you can make sure that you will be out there to vote and make your voice heard in the next government election. Pledgetovote.co.za. Please do go there and check it out. It's a great little website. Considering all the stories we talk about every single day on this show, I think it's really important that South Africans do make their voice heard, because we have some problems, to put it mildly. Okay. All right, I think that is probably all the time we have for today. We hope that you found this show interesting, and we will, of course, be back on Monday. Cheers, everyone, and have a wonderful day.